Welcome to the Nevada Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Hopefully you didn't get too sunburned out there. Beautiful day in Happy Valley. Beautiful game for the Nittany Lions. We are going to get to all of that here on the Postgame Show. We've got 59 minutes and 30 seconds to talk about a whole bunch of different things. This is kind of a set the expectations for what we saw and understand what we just saw from the Nittany Lions. Because, yes, they won 46-11. Over the Nevada Wolfpack. But what else did we learn about the team in this particular game? We're going to go through some of the game plan things that we noticed from both sides, how that made the game play out the way it did. And, of course, some of the things we want to get to are your questions and your thoughts here on the show. It's just me up here, and anytime that there's silence, listen, I spent 10 years in radio. So anytime there's silence up here, I get real nervous, even though it's the internet and there's no alarm that's going to go off if there's silence. That being said, you watching me read, and if you're listening on the podcast, on the post-game show, you listening to me read silently as I read your comments, nobody wants that. So be in the chat. I'll do my best to get to some of your questions and your comments throughout the show because you are my co-host here on the show. But first off, Nittany Lions look great. Penn State racks up 438 yards of offense, give up less than 97. They gave up 97 yards, less than 100 yards passing to the starting quarterback for Nevada. Some of these things that we told you about coming into the game did play into how this one played out. Some longer drives maybe than expected. Penn State didn't necessarily dominate third and short or third down as much. Now, before you start worrying about the defensive tackle rotation and linebackers and things like that, when you have a running quarterback, and they have a running quarterback, third and short's a little bit easier. And if you've got a team that's their offense, those things are going to happen in games like this one. So we've got a lot of great stuff to get to here on the show. What do you want to hear first, offense or defense? Let me know in the chat, and then I'll try and read for your comments. Let's get to Young Pariah. Says, transfer wide receivers looked great. Of course, that's where we're going to start. Are you kidding me? Of course we're going to talk about the receivers here. That was a very, I think, cathartic way that Penn State started this game. Some things that I thought were really, really impressive. Drew Aller completed 85% of his passes. 85% of his passes. That's raw completion percentage. That doesn't take drops out of the equation and throwaways, which I think he had one of each in those. So we're getting close to a 90% completion percentage. It was like 7-on-7 out there for him. Only the one touchdown. More pressure than you would like, but I think there's some mitigating factors of the fact that you had young guys in there. Cooper Cousins gave up a pressure in the second quarter. They were doing a lot of mixing and matching on the offensive line to get everybody reps and getting back into the flow. Mike K says, talk about the O-line. We'll get to that in a minute. Let's not start that way, though, because I think a lot of people, including, we started out the show with Ryan saying, I'm disappointed in the offensive line, expect more of them. Am I wrong? They won 46-11, so let's go through these things priority-wise. I know that everyone's going to get nervous about the fact that it wasn't a 66-point blowout. And by the way, that was my prediction. They fell 20 points short of my prediction. The run game, maybe that was part of it, of why they didn't get there to, they didn't have any of those explosive runs. Longest run on the day was 13 yards by Chubba Purdy. So not as many of those explosive runs as maybe we thought. Again, there are some reasons for that. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But let's talk about those receivers. Let's stay on task talking about the receivers. Kyron Hudson, Chubba Purdy, they caught the football and got open. They caught the football and they got open. When they were supposed to be at 10 yards and turn around, they were at 10 yards and turned around. When they were supposed to run a deep speed out and they're supposed to be along the sideline, they ran a deep speed out and were along the sideline for easy completions. There was only one play where Chubba Purdy got in, at the top of his route. He got into a bit of a shoving match with the DB, didn't get his head around in time, he didn't come back downhill towards the ball. Now, was the ball a little bit far outside of his frame? Yeah, but you're trying to lead the receiver a little bit in on that route. So I thought he was a little late coming out of his break, still hit him in the hands. That's the one time I can think of where the receivers were not necessarily where they needed to be on a play. And if you were watching that and you went, hey, Aller missed on that one, I don't care. I'm not debating 6 inches one way or the other when the ball is on the frame mostly of the receiver. Also, if Chubba Purdy isn't my size and he might be able to catch that. If he's 6'1" with longer arms, it wouldn't have looked like it was so far outside his frame. So those are minor details in what was an excellent passing attack. The passing attack led them to this victory. So let's not lose sight of the fact that their passing game was good today. Drew Aller looked like a first-round draft pick quarterback, slinging the ball on a rope places, looked really good off-platform, working on that all offseason. They work on it every offseason, but this is an area where I really feel like that was an area he struggled, even in the blue-white game. Wasn't necessarily earlier this year firing on all cylinders when he was trying to throw off-platform, especially when he was moving to his left. If you're a right-hand quarterback moving to your left and you're kind of like backpedaling, that footwork can be difficult to get your hips square and to get turned around that way and throw with accuracy. He threw a touchdown. He threw a ball to Kyron Hudson, toe tap on the sideline. All those things look great. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm thinking about it. There was the one ball. Maybe the one ball that I didn't love from him was on Pena or on Hudson's back shoulder. That would have been a touchdown early in the game. But 85% completion percentage was an excellent day from Drew Aller. This is the offense I've been telling you about all offseason. This is the offense that I expected to see from these guys, where they get open, they get the football, and I think if you're talking about Nevada, it's really indicative of what they do, that Penn State didn't have any explosive play touchdowns that were like the 50-yard touchdown or the 60-yard touchdown, either on the ground or through the air. Now, there's a good side, bad side to that. Let's start with the good side, which is overwhelmingly good. Nevada changed 54 players this offseason, including their safeties and a lot of their corners. So when you do that, and Penn State's reputation in this game is a part of the equation, what we saw last year doesn't necessarily apply. You can change a lot of things from a structural standpoint, but you don't change your coaching. So even last year, we talked about them playing quarters a lot, where you play two deep safeties and you keep everything in front of you, and you fill in the run game kind of with guys flying from all different angles. They played a lot of cover three in this game, way more one deep safety, extra guy in the box than normal. So Penn State came out, and that's what Aller did. He took all the underneath completions, because it doesn't matter if it's cover three or quarters, you attack that the same way. You attack that by, if they're going to give you 15 yards of cushion, then you run a 12-yard route and you profit. And that's it. That's what they did. They would come inside and they would shrink the formation. Then they'd run out routes, Chubba Purdy along the sideline, easy catch and pitch and catch. And I didn't feel like there was anyone who was fighting the football in the air, or they weren't fighting the route. So there's a lot of really good stuff. Now, did we see these receivers pressed a whole lot? We didn't really see that on the day. But when you put it all together, 74 yards for Chubba Purdy, 89 yards and a touchdown for Kyron Hudson. That busted play touchdown. Last year, I don't know if that happens necessarily. Aller may have dropped his eyes and looked for something underneath. The fact that he kept his eyes upfield and trusted his receiver to see it with him, everyone on the same page, really impressive stuff. The other thing that I wonder about with this particular game plan shifting. Okay, so the second part of this is Nevada, before I move on. Nevada's plan of attack of playing, it doesn't matter what coverage it is, whether it's quarters or cover three, their goal is to keep everything in front of them. I watched them give up those massive underneath throws that you saw today, time and time and time again on film last year, because you could tell those safeties were taught, do not get beat deep. Your job is to be the deepest of the deep. Do not let anyone buy you. So when Penn State tried to take shots, those weren't really there. When they tried to go down the field, those guys did not allow anything behind them. So a little concerning that Penn State's speed didn't just blow that open anyway, right? So there's a little bit of a concern of this was a really good performance, but I still have an open question. Do they have the horses to get downfield and have that speed to really open up things for a team? Because there was at no point did Nevada feel like they have to put extra coverage defenders down the field, which leads us to the offensive line. Dropping an extra player in the box, playing the run the way they did, that's part of it. I also wonder, Andy Kotelnicki did this last year in the playoffs. This is something that they did a lot at the end of last year, of running tempo. Get a good play, then hurry up, get a base call and from the defense, and run your outside zone system, trying to then attack with speed and then attack with speed. So the speed of the time of the play, how quickly you're going, and then attack with speed, where Penn State's offensive line, fast, big, strong, powerful offensive line with explosive running backs, trying to then double down on that of basically, if you played Mario Kart, hitting the speed jump. Like, that's kind of what going tempo, running outside zone, a forcible lateral stretch will do, trying to open up some seams to try and hit a good play, hit a chunk play, then rip off an explosive run for a touchdown. That didn't materialize. That's the part where I think if you're looking at this game and you're saying for the Penn State offense, what didn't you see that you wanted to see? It was those just forceful, vicious runs. They also played 7 offensive linemen on a couple of plays. There's no universe where you're going to run 7 offensive linemen and you're just going to find a lot of running room, because it's a gravitational force. When you have 7 offensive linemen and 2 tight ends, there are 22 people within 5 yards. I don't care if you're Michael Jackson and you can moonwalk, as a football player, like whatever the equation of that would be. I don't care if you're Saquon Barkley. At a certain point, that many people in that small of an area, you're just going to get tackled. So there is a part of that. But I would say, now if we're going to transition from all the good stuff, Penn State won 46-11, some of the stuff on the offensive line, they did not generate the gaps that you maybe would have expected in this game. There's a couple of things that we'll get into here, and we'll get to your questions here in just one second, kind of an opening thought from the offensive perspective. The offensive line, maybe that right side, still is a work in progress. Anthony Donko had some good plays. I don't know that he looked like Anthony Donko from this time last year. I think he's still working back from that injury, and he maybe wasn't as explosive and forceful in the run game as I had expected. He was just out there, and we got to see him practice, and he's going, and he looks fine. Guys move and they look fine. But there's a difference between looking fine and being able to move a 300-pound human against their will. That requires a different level of trust in your body and a different level of strength and power. And those things maybe are going to take a little bit of time for him to get back. So that's the first comment on the run game. You see 3.8 yards per carry. Only Katron Allen averaged over 4 yards a carry. That's a little bit of an okay. Let's put a pin in that. Let's watch that as this season goes on. But again, I'm not going to sneeze at the fact that the Penn State passing game, led by a senior quarterback and 3 senior transfer wide receivers, absolutely shredded a defense that was just going to give them a bunch of underneath plays all day long. Okay, we talked about that. Now we need to get to our defensive player of the game and the player of the game by far. I love this segment, and I am a huge fan of Matt McClanahan. He stopped by our tailgate show earlier today. He's just a good dude. Like, I enjoy his personality in my text thread of the people in my life that is talking to me about Penn State football. He is a Penn State super fan. He's also a criminal defense attorney here in State College. So this was his 124th consecutive game Penn State Superfan. I met him at a Penn State Superfan event a couple years ago that I was asked to attend, and we hit it off, and he's a great guy. That's the first thing. Solid human being. I really enjoy him as a person. He's also a sponsor here of the Defensive Player of the Game. Very accessible. You can reach him nights and weekends. I actually forget sometimes that I'll text him at Saturday at like 7:30 like an idiot. Yeah, it's not about anything that I would need representation about, but that's what he says. You can even call him nights and weekends. Criminal defense attorney for 24 years. Most of you are never going to need a criminal defense attorney. And that's great, right? We all want to be in that situation forever and always. But if you do, you absolutely want to know a name, and you don't want to be thinking about it. You want to know a name. Somebody who is going to get you and is going to relate to you and is a person that you feel like you can trust. I trust Matt McClanahan, a fellow member of the Penn State fan community. For more information, again, if you ever need it, mattmlaw.com. Now, he thought, like me, that Penn State was going to rip off a whole bunch of touchdowns. He thought it was going to be a bigger game, bigger blowout than it was. And one guy who made that almost true was Dani Dennis-Sutton. Another one of those stat stuffer kind of games from Dani. He had 5 tackles, 4 of those solo, only 1 sack. Is that true? He only had 1 sack in the game. He had another quarterback hit. They gave him a pass breakup, 2 tackles for a loss, and 2 forced fumbles. So a really good game from Dani. Vicious in the run game. As a pass rusher, good pass rush, explosive off the edge. It doesn't look like Abdul. It's not going to, I think, function like Abdul, but at the same time, just unblockable overall in this game. He came out fired up and ready to go. And I hate doing that. I hate doing the didn't look like Abdul. Dude dominated in this game. Absolutely force off the edge for the Nittany Lions who need that, and had a lot of timely plays. Making plays like that is a huge thing for Penn State's defensive line. So that was our defensive player of the game. Defensively overall, I think we saw a little bit of, and this is just kind of a high view thing. I said this on the tailgate show. If you've got a running quarterback, that can keep you in games. I guess we can say it keeps you in games. It keeps drives alive. So if I'm looking at the drive chart for Nevada, their first drive went 8 plays for 44 yards. And then they had another drive of 9 plays for 59 yards, and that took up 10 minutes of the first half. So they had a third of the time in the first half. Now, they gave up a fumble, an interception, and a 3-and-out in the first 3 drives, but it did take up 8.5 minutes. So James Franklin mentioned it before the half where they were really chewing the clock, trying to shorten the game so Penn State could not go, as they did, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. No way! They went alternating the entire game, touchdown, field goal. Another reason, by the way, they didn't score 60 points is because they kicked 3 field goals, 2 of them in the red zone, in like the low red zone. So, some things to clean up, I think, there as well. But for the defense, when you have a running quarterback and you play a defense like Penn State does, there were just some times where they got good calls. Nevada got good calls on third down where they ran the quarterback, the running back becomes a blocker, and you just get numbers at the right point in time because Penn State is thinking pass and trying to play pass because they're used to practicing against a team that has a viable passing attack. I think it was every third down that I was watching, even a false start third down, they were going to run the football regardless of what the down and distance was on third down. So just there are certain things that happen there. I'm not trying to excuse bad run defense, and that's where I'm going to go into the film, and we're going to look at and break that down tomorrow of what were the run fits like, where were some of the mistakes. Dom DeLuca on one of those quarterback options that Purdy had the explosive run in the second quarter. Dom DeLuca didn't get into his gap. And then the next play on the screen, Antoine Belgrave shorter. First off, great calls by Nevada's play caller on that particular sequence with the option. And then they hit the screen. Penn State blitzes. They throw a screen at that blitz. Belgrave shorter gets caught by an offensive lineman, does not get down to his player. Then that's another 20 yards. Suddenly they're in the red zone. Penn State holds for a field goal. There are some things in this defense where it is going to be a little soft at times, where they are going to play players deep and play more safeties deep, even in this particular game, against a team that is playing, has really no passing attack to speak of. You are trying to stop that with as few players in the box as possible. And so Penn State maybe gives up some of those things here and there, but I don't think necessarily that there's anything to be concerned about with the Penn State defense and how they performed against the run. So let's get to some of your questions and thoughts here in the chat. Stephen Light says, back in 25 with T. Frank's post-game show. Stephen Light, thank you for being here. Regular here on the BWI Live show, which if you're catching this for the first time, there's probably a bunch of new people. We do this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday live at 10 a.m. To talk about this. We'll recap the game on Tuesday. We'll preview the next game on Wednesday, or we'll keep talking about Penn State because it's FIU, and who knows if we want to talk about that. Brett Struer says, don't overreact. Don't overreact. Did you see the catch on the sideline by Kyron Hudson? Overreact to that. No. That is one to overreact to. Or I should say, react correctly to that one, because damn, that was awesome. these are the things that, and you never know how they're going to show up in a new offense. We saw Kyron Hudson with some of these acrobatics last year. Like, he is just, there are things he does where it's not necessarily wide receiver one stuff, like he's not the complete package as a football player, but he's damn close. Like, there's some things he doesn't do, maybe in terms of speed, which we covered, and maybe nobody in this group has like elite speed, but his hands, his ball control, he's going to be so reliable and make some of those not just reliable plays, but above and beyond with his hands. A guy that can make acrobatic catches, contested catches, and come up with things that maybe other guys in Penn State's history we've seen have, but not as many. So I expect that to continue. I expect that to keep happening. And to mention that, and to say this again, Drew Aller's work on the run as a passer was awesome. There were no bad balls where he threw a duck while moving. We can get to we can get to some of the pocket movement in a little bit, but Bourbon Brother Whiskey Nerds says, really like the game plan. Aller on point, and of course Dani Dennis-Sutton. About the game plan, I don't know. Okay, so they pushed the ball down the field, and they had selective shots that they threw in. So I don't want this to come off as like they didn't test deep all that much, because they did. The screen game, like, it was very screen heavy. There were so many screens in this game, and that is an extension of the run game. So maybe when we're talking about the run game today, and we say Trevor Pena had 74 yards, I'm interested to see how much of that, actually right here, 40 of that was after the catch. So a lot of what he was doing, the underneath stuff, the short and then catch and run. I mean, Andy Kotelnicki told Nate Bauer this summer, and we had our exclusive interviews, he was talking about how much he likes his athletes on the outside and their ability to catch after the run, to run after the catch. Wow, that was total dyslexia. Those, I don't know does that play continually throughout the year. Now, part of the reason that they did that is because of what I mentioned with Nevada's game plan. Nevada really wants to keep everything in front of them, but if you're 10 yards off the ball, then, you should probably throw the ball and let guys catch and run. This is the Labatt postgame show, I should remind you. And this fall, as we're all settling in for football, the sun is going down. Beautiful weather here in Happy Valley. If you're here and you're listening to this maybe on the car ride home, just look up and look at the sky. It's beautiful. This fall, and the leaves are starting to turn, nothing goes better with college football than an ice-cold Labatt Blue or a Labatt Blue Light, because when you bleed blue and white, you drink blue and light. Born in Canada, brewed in the USA, Labatt has been a game day tradition for fans who know how to celebrate each first down and every touchdown. Here's to the best part. When you stock up on Labatt, you can score big off the field too. Visit rewards.labattusa.com. Let me give it to you again so I don't fat finger that with my mouth. Rewards.labattusa.com to get rewards with buy beer, get gear program. So whether you're tailgating with 107,000 friends or maybe you're just watching at home with 409, I don't know, maybe 409 friends are at home, crack a Labatt Blue or Labatt Blue Light and make every Saturday a win. Please drink responsibly. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Appreciate Labatt for being a sponsor here on the show. Love them back here as our title sponsor for the Penn State postgame show. I'm T. Frank. You can see here on the screen, nobody else is joining me. You're my co-host. What do you got, chat? This is one of those days where I want to know what you thought of the game as well, because I got notes. We can talk about that. But what is the first thing that jumps to mind when you saw that game, something that you went, oh, okay. Bryce says it's Collins over Washington as CB2. I'm not surprised by that. I think Elliot Washington's offseason in Workout Warrior, Workout of the Day winner, really got him to a point where everyone was expecting him to be the starter. And we talked about this on the show. I viewed them as 1A and 1B. Now, I was wrong where Davian Collins has taken that job, it seems, where he's the starter. We'll see We will see how that goes throughout the rest of the year because we saw this last time they had 3 corners like this. You saw it every other game as to who was the starter. But Davian Collins is super talented. If you watch the way he played a lot of those contested catches last year as a corner, he's aggressive. He's hyper athletic. I think he's got the best feet since Daquan Hardy. Excuse me. I wanted to say Day Lane. I've moved on to the next Daquan. Daquan Hardy, I thought, had elite slot corner feet. Davian Collins is just as athletic in coverage, can mirror just about anybody. So, and the way he was able to trigger downhill in this defense, I thought was really good. Speaking of, this is going to be a nightmare for me. Watching this defense and trying to figure out what's happening because they play a lot of off coverage. Another reason that Nevada was able to sustain some drives is it was kind of a mirrored game plan. Penn State is going to play off and then attack downhill. So you can try and get 5 yards. Eventually, when you're going to make a mistake in completion, they're going to keep everything in front of them, and they're going to try and get to the catch point because guys like Davian Collins are so explosive and fast out of their break that they're going to get to the catch point in playing off-man coverage or in zone. What happened, though, in the second half is they started dialing up a few more blitzes. And then you saw Dejon Lane get a sack. You saw a little more aggressiveness from Tony Rojas. There was a lot of pressure and adjusting to the game plan. When Nevada did want to actually throw the football, they would use a bootleg to get Purdy out of the pocket because they didn't want to get him killed. They saw how that game was going, and they're smart, so they tried to get him on the edges of and let him give the natural run pass option in those situations, and so started firing players off the edge in this third quarter to stop that. Tony Rojas was there to eliminate a play in the flat and then was able to rally for a tackle for a short gain, and then you got some negative plays later in the game. Who stood out to you in this game? Because that's interesting. I've got some on the other side of that. Some of the young guys, some growing pains. I mentioned Antoine Belgrave Shorter, his miss on that screenplay of not being able to get to his man. Kenny Wosley had a bit of a rough day. There was an option run early in the game where Zakee Wheatley cleaned it up. He pushed a little too far outside. I thought his eyes were in the right place. So this is a good thing. His eyes were in the right place. He saw his man because I think on that play he's the next guy outside. So that would be his job is to get the quarterback. He did the right thing of getting outside leverage to flush him back inside, but he overran it a little bit and then gave the quarterback an alley. Now Zakee Wheatley was there and was able to get a tackle for a short game. But it's another one of those situations where that then allowed Nevada to set up a third and medium or third and short, which I don't remember at that play. But they were getting a lot of those third and mediums that they could then convert with the quarterback option game. And then, of course, later in the game, giving up the seam shot with the second team defense on the field. So just a couple of young guys making some growing pain mistakes. We talk about how talented this defense is, and they are young behind that, so they got to make sure that some of these guys grow up. And these are the moments they're doing it, by the way. Kenny Wosley has been really good at that position this offseason. He's been impressive in the kind of, when we got to see him in the blue-white game, when we got to see him in practice and going through some of the one-on-one drills. But they need to kind of get these guys to get up to speed. Speaking of that secondary, we did not see a lot of the exotic coverage alignments from Zakee Wheatley necessarily. He didn't factor into the run game as much as I thought he would today. And I don't think that they're necessarily keeping stuff. It's just that didn't really fit into this particular game plan. Or, I don't know, maybe they are. Maybe they are still working on that package where he's going to act as that monster linebacker 8 to 10 yards off the ball, basically as the middle linebacker. They had him there, but they also then dropped him into coverage and didn't use him in sort of that blitzing situation. And it made me think, we talk about football, or at least I do, based on what I've seen, to try and understand what might happen or what should happen in the future based on the past. So Jim Knowles runs a particular defense at Ohio State. He comes to Penn State, and we think, okay, he's going to run that. What does he need to run that? He needs a safety like Caleb Downs. Well, here's Zakee Wheatley. What if Zakee Wheatley isn't Caleb Downs, and they're not going to do the exact same thing they did last year? seems pretty reasonable. So maybe there's a little bit of that coming out of this game. If I'm just going to do a little bit more digging, and this is where the post-game film analysis is really important for me, of understanding, seeing where everyone lined up in every play, and actually kind of charting these things, which we'll do on the Blue White Illustrated message board tomorrow. Shameless plug, because there's almost 300 people here watching live. First off, if you're watching live, let me check here. Got my counter up. We have 47 likes. I can't do math live, but that's not even that's not a lot. So half of you, if you just hit the like button, like I say, calorie free. It requires no effort on your part. You hit the like button, helps us out a lot. But if you want to join us for that tomorrow, it is just $1 to sign up for BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I'll be breaking all these plays down, giving you diagrams, showing you the video. I sit here, I'm watching the film live as the game is going on during the commercial breaks, and then I watch it all again tomorrow. And if you want to join me for that, it's just $1 to sign up for a year, for a full week, and then you can join us for a full year after that if you want to stay on with us, but it's $1 for the first week. Bryce wants to know, am I going to do the game plan for OSU versus Texas? Yes. In November. I will do that in November when we get to that. Bryce, it takes me 10 hours to break down the film we just watched just now. Like, it takes me 10 hours to do that tomorrow. There is no way I have enough time to do it this week. I'll try. For you, I'll try. You're at Labor Day, you grill, have your hot dogs and burgers. I'll throw on a little bit of the game film from Ohio State, Texas to see what this Ohio State defense is like. Because I'm with you. I'm curious. But there's no way like I'm doing a deep dive on Ohio State film versus Texas right now. Because I still need to understand Jim Knowles' defense here. I had an 8-month head start, and there's going to be a lot of learning because it is very complicated. Yes, I know. I don't have a bunch of people working for me for the bloggy. I don't have a bunch of minions. It's a one-man band. We've got more. You guys are fun tonight. I'm appreciating you guys. Kevin Chandler is here. He's always up in our comments here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. He says, as a diehard Nittany Lion fan, pretty much what I expected. First game is always going to be sloppy at times. Still very good, he says. Happy with that performance. Ryan, he's back. He says, T. Frank, great post game again. I thought the linebackers were very average, really struggled to shed blocks and tackle. Okay. I'll accept your analysis there. I think there was a little bit of that. I don't have as much of a problem with Tony Rojas. I thought Rojas was good in this game. He had a couple TFLs. He was able to get in the backfield. I guess this is the thing where this defense is not going to spike into a gap and try and plug up every hole so there's 0 yards allowed. And Ryan, I think this is where, like I was trying to say this before, this defense is going to give up 2 or 3 yard gains so that they don't give up the 10-yard gasher. And I know, like I said, the quarterback run game, that's a very unique situation. Basically, Nevada's game plan was to run the ball in this game with their quarterback and with their running backs, and they got 78 total yards. So the quarterback got 55. I agree. It was not as clean at times as you may have expected, where there were still some running lanes. And that's where, kind of the stuff gets muddy in the middle of the field. And I don't want to jump out too harshly here and say, like, the linebackers were not good. I do know, like, there were a couple plays. Dom DeLuca got beat on a couple, but I thought Amari Campbell was pretty good in this game of being able to sniff out where the football was, but that might have been 3 or 4 yards down the field. It just doesn't feel as good as when Manny Diaz is dialing up pressures and stunts, and everyone's doing this ballet up front, and suddenly, whoop, there's a guy cleaning the hole, nobody blocking him, and the running back is there too. There's just going to be less of that in this particular defense. But that doesn't mean, I think Ohio State fans did not like that at times this defense would give up some rushing yards. So I don't want to jump on board here with you, but I agree that I saw some of the similar things from the linebackers in this game or just the defensive front in general. But this is where they have a harder job this year now. because Penn State is not going to continually drop a safety into the box or bring a nickel on a blitz so that every single gap is filled, and they're going to, make a running back bounce, or they're going to try and get a TFL, or they're going to do a bunch of exotic things to get into the backfield. They're going to be more gap sound and play the gap in front of them more often this year, and that means the linebackers have a harder job because they have to read then react. And they had to do that in the other defense. But there were a lot of blitzes where run blitz where just go hit this hole and the ball will be there, I promise. There's more reading and reacting here, and they've got to get better at that. They've got to get more instinctive about that. And I think that's what Jim Knowles was saying about this, is that there's all these there's all these learning curves for those players in this particular defense. I tried to get Tony Rojas to describe the difference this year as opposed to last year after practice, and he just absolutely had no interest. He had no interest in the question, so I tried. I tried my best to give him to get a little insight into that, and that was kind of what I want to learn and where that's one of the things I'm going to be looking at in the post game. But overall, the defense, when they did blitz, to Ryan's point, then the running and the throwing and the passing and the scoring was over. Jeff Newman says, we didn't throw the tight ends much, but curious to see how well they were blocking. That's another one of those things, Jeff. Oh man, usually I come in here and I got like a good idea, good handle on things. I don't on the tight end blocking tonight. I was focused on, first off, who's lining up where, with especially the right side of the offensive line, and then kind of getting an idea of where they were. If the offensive line isn't blocking to the highest degree, the tight ends aren't necessarily going to be as important. I don't want to say that in a dismissive way. A couple things I can tell you, though. I do have a couple up here off the dome. Luke Reynolds, there was a potential touchdown with Trevor Pena on a screen in the red zone that eventually led to a field goal. Trevor Pena gets a screen, and they have two tight ends blocking out in a screen formation, in a trips formation. And Luke Reynolds and Khalil Dinkins both blocked the same guy. Nobody went to get the safety. Nobody went to get the linebacker that was crashing. So mental errors, and those are blocks by tight ends. On the touchdown run to Katron Allen, you did have a lead blocker from Khalil Dinkins steamrolling away for that side of the offensive line. So there was some good, there was some bad. I thought we saw more Andrew Rappelier than I was expecting. And not necessarily that I was expecting, but I very much thought it was going to be 1A, 1B, and then they would work Rappelier in at certain points. But he got a lot of run blocking near the red zone. I think that makes some sense for this group. I do want to go back to Jeff's point and see how they were as blockers. So there's some stuff to clean up, I think, offensively. Some of the execution in these situations, now that we're kind of like train of thought going back to the offense from Jeff's question. So when you go fast, you can catch the other team in a bad call, right? That's the idea. Or somebody makes a mistake, somebody's not lined up, you get a free gap. The problem is the same thing happens to you. The only difference is you know that you're going fast. But the mental processing time, I know this is a veteran unit, especially along the offensive line. But when you go fast, there's just more time, there's more opportunity for error from guys, whether it's physical error because they're tired and they miss a block, or they just can't think very, on their feet so quickly. If the quarterback can do it, great. I do feel like sometimes when this offense goes fast, they kind of stall out. And I don't know why that is. I actually don't have I'm kind of shooting some darts in the wind here about why that happens, but I noticed it in the Maryland game last year and sometimes against Boise State in the playoffs, where they would try and go fast, and either it was the execution or it was just that it wasn't as effective as they wanted it to be, so now you're running on first down or you're running in an obvious situation. And maybe that's part of it, where the tell is they're going to go fast and then they're going to run. So, and I will say that is a pretty good tell, that when Penn State goes tempo, they're usually running after their explosive play. Maybe they need to just call another pass play. If you want to go fast and you want to attack, attack with the things that were working today, which was the passing game. But Andy Kotelnicki, he knows a lot, and I don't want to sit here 30 minutes after the end of the game being like, well, that play call wasn't very good. I don't know. I would assume he knows a lot more than I do. These are some of the observations I've seen over time. Who is happier today, Jim Knowles or Andy Kotelnicki? I think Jim Knowles, Andy Kotelnicki seems like a happier dude. I think from a personality standpoint, he's at least more outgoingly jovial. So probably Andy Kotelnicki. There were some mental errors on the defense. I think there were some mental errors on the offense, but the passing, I would be very happy about my quarterbacks. We're 40 minutes in, and we haven't talked about Ethan Grunkmeyer going 7 of 9 for 86 yards and scampering for a touchdown. Dude, been trying to say about Ethan Grunkmeyer, 2 things about him. His arm is, it's hard to gauge these things. I don't know how RPM-wise, but his arm is in the same conversation as Drew Aller. Dude has a cannon, and it's all like whip. He's got a really good whippy, quick release. Everything about Grunkmeyer is compact and efficient. His throwing motion, his hips, his feet, the way the ball comes off his hand. And to throw the way he did under pressure in the pocket, maybe I will even throw out the word moxie. Dude's got some moxie in his game, which is something we saw in high school. And it's been 2 years since then, or a year and a half, whatever it was, since we've seen that. It's always nice to see those things then translate over onto the college football field. And this is our first real chance. He threw 1 pass in a playoff game last year. I was really impressed with Ethan Grunkmeyer in this game. So, as James Franklin said, the quarterback competition was pretty close because another dude with some moxie, Jackson Smolik, did not win it through the first week. We'll see if he is tabbed to get some of the playing time against FIU. But it looks like Penn State's got a run of quarterbacks. Now, the thing that I'm interested in, total side note, talking a little bit about recruiting, they went on a run with these 3 guys that are on the roster right now. Drew Aller off the top here as a senior. Following that up with Ethan Grunkmeyer and Jackson Smolik, then Ethan Grunkmeyer. All 3 of these guys can play, and they can play from the neck up, and each of them has unique special traits. I think as much as we saw some good stuff from Aller and from Grunkmeyer, Smolik, when he's out there, what I've seen of him, dude is a stone-cold killer. He is locked in when he is under pressure and does not get rattled a whole lot. Now, want to see it on the college football field. I want to see him play to see what that's like. After that, there have been some misses in recruiting. There's no way around it. They had a couple of guys that they were going after. They didn't get. Beckham Kritza is very much a developmental project, and who knows? Maybe if Ethan Grunkmeyer is the guy, or you get 2 or 3 years out of these 2 players, and then suddenly you find another. But you always feel better when you stack in a couple classes, and you got some guys that you feel like are really good. They got Troy Hune coming in. I think he's a very good football player. I want to see how his senior season goes. But I think the quarterback run that they went on is setting them up very good for not just 2025, but 2025 and beyond. We don't need to get too far ahead of ourselves. This is the first game of the year. But Ethan Grunkmeyer was great, and it makes you think like starry-eyed about the future. Because there's some young receivers on this roster that might be pretty good in a couple years. Speaking of, we talked about things we've seen. What about things we did not see? We talked about maybe not so as much explosive running as I would have expected, but none of the young receivers played with the starting unit. There was a tight rotation of 4. Devontae Ross did not get a lot of action in this game. And I don't want to peg him as just the deep threat. I don't want to say like his only role is going to be to stretch the defense, because I think he can be a lot of other things as well. And I know he's coming back from an injury, but he was the one guy that was quiet today. But it was just those 4 receivers, just that top 4, and then it was the tight ends and running backs that you expected. No Quentin Martin today. Cam Wallace was the first runner off the bench, and I thought he looked good. Obviously, he looked good. He looked like Saquon, jumping over a dude and falling and keep running and going out of bounds on his feet. That was really impressive. Z-Man says, no Kobe Howard. Yeah, no Kobe Howard. Here's the thing, is as far as the way James Franklin described the 6 deep of receivers, he was behind Kyron Hudson. Kyron Hudson's not coming off the field. And when he did, Trevor Pena was the guy who came in those 2 receiver situations. So they're going to rotate those veterans. They're going to get a lot of action. They're going to get a lot of playing time. So as much as like Kobe Howard, maybe the backup X is actually Trevor Pena. Ideally, would you be able to keep Pena in the slot or out to the field? Yeah, but that's not where they are right now, apparently, with Kobe Howard. And Tysier Denmark didn't see the field, which also makes sense because if you're going to be rotating between a 2-back set, 2 tight end set, and a 3 receiver set, you're not going to go too far down your depth chart, especially at the slot, because you got to keep Trevor Pena involved in the game. He's not going to get 8 targets in a game if you're splitting a lot of reps with other people. Kevin Chandler wants to know if Bo balled out so much. Why is he not the starter at Mizzou? I don't know. He is the starter at Mizzou. I think he's trying to say why is he not the starter here and why he's at Mizzou. Anyway, I think that's what he's trying to say. Either way, Bo was great. Drew was great. Everyone was great. It was a good weekend for current and former Penn State quarterbacks on the roster. Let me look at my notes here because we've gotten through a lot of the things that I think are important about this game, things that we learned. The offensive line gave a little more pressure than I expected, and I think a lot of those were details and good blitzes by Nevada, which I don't know if that's good or not. So one of them was Cooper Cousins giving up a stunt on the interior, and that's just a young guy being a young guy. And you talk about, well, why isn't Cooper Cousins the starter? Why is Anthony Donko the starter? Anthony Donko, for the most part, even though I think he also had a mistake in this game in pass protection, which gave up a pressure on Aller, is going to make fewer of those mistakes. It's not always about the highs. It's about how many lows are you preventing, especially in pass protection. So there were a couple of plays where 2 guys blocked 1 blitzer, and then a second linebacker came free at Aller. There were very few X got beat and Aller got immediate pressure and had to run. A lot of this was schemed up. There might have been 1 or 2. I don't know off the top of my head. But there was one particular play where they overloaded the left side of the line, and Penn State was running a play action power, which means the center is pretending to pull, and then he's now resetting the pocket as the edge protector, basically as the right tackle. One of my biggest pet peeves is this particular play protection because you're asking your center to now play left tackle or right tackle. That's a very hard job for them. You're also asking the entire offense then to down block this way, which should be like wash all the pressure this way, and then you got a one-on-one outside, which is a little bit easier. But the problem is it's too many gaps, too many leaks where players can come through. You can get a defensive tackle knifing through behind the puller. You can get linebackers overloading a gap. And then guys can just miss in pass protection. What happened was Anthony Donko is down blocking into the gap where Nick Dawkins used to be. Katron Allen is coming off the play action fake, and they both pick up the same linebacker. Now you've got your right tackle, Nolan Ricci, at that point, blocking a defensive tackle, and there's now a free rusher coming off the edge because another linebacker blitzed from the right. They didn't have their eyes up to account for everybody, and now you got a free runner at the quarterback. But for the most part, what happened in this game was they did a good job of compressing the pocket and trapping Aller when he tried to step up. So the offensive line actually stayed in front of the pass rush fairly well in this game. There were no egregious pressures outside of some of those mental errors we just discussed. The problem was they were getting pushed back a little bit. Nolan Ricci got pushed back a little bit on a couple of plays. Aller felt that pressure. He had to step up into the pocket. He did a great job of stepping up and running last year. There were no running lanes. They did a great job of muddying that up and making sure that he, when he got to the line of scrimmage, didn't have a free access into the middle of the field. A couple of times he did, lowered his shoulder. We all went, hope he doesn't do that again. And then he did that again. So that was the offensive line in pass protection. I don't think they were bad. They were not as clean as you would hope for a veteran unit returning, But at the same time, you got Cooper Cousins playing guard. You've got Anthony Donko playing tackle and guard. You got, I think that on one of the plays where they gave up a pressure, it was TJ Shanahan in at left guard. So you're giving some veteran rest to Venga Ioane. There was just a lot of movement up front. And so that is part of the offensive line analysis for today. They didn't churn as much as they would maybe normally because they're still doing some, hey, this is not a practice. We have to win. But it's a bit of a practice here where we have the latitude. We have the margin of error where we can mix and match on the right side of the offensive line. So offensive line and pressure, areas you like a win where you can then coach off of. So that's an area I know James Franklin will be coaching pretty hard off of. We covered QBs, covered Anthony Donko, not as many explosive plays as we like. The passing game, I just want to come back to this again. Ultra efficient, and if that continues for the season, this team is going to be very, very hard to stop. But those are the things that I've got here for the show for you today. James Franklin coming up here in just 1 second, where he's going to have the full press conference. Are we arguing about Bo Perbula in the comments? Are you guys arguing about your ex in the comments? Is that really what's going on? I thought we were better than this. I just see Bo Perbula too many times here in the chat. James Franklin's press conference coming up next. That is going to be here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. We'll also have instant analysis from the field, our guys who were at the stadium. They're going to give you the rundown on everything I missed and more as they give you the conversation live from field level with Nate Bauer, Sean Fitz, and Greg Pickle. So that's coming up here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. We got some new stuff as well. I don't want to say too much because it's our first run through, but we got some exciting stuff. You want to follow us on social media, you're going to follow us here on the YouTube channel. We'll have that for you here coming up in just a few minutes. I want to give you some more time. You got any more questions? I know it's I promise you guys an hour. And normally I have no problem filling 60 minutes with constant conversation about Penn State football. It was Nevada. And they did give us not that much. Like, they didn't challenge the secondary at all. I have no thoughts or comments on the secondary, honestly. There wasn't really anything there for me to glean without looking at the All-22. I will say, one thing that I'm going to look at, when Penn State did try to take deep shots, what happened? Because there were a couple of dead plays where Aller looked deep. Apparently there wasn't anything there, and he had to check down or scramble. I thought he looked good in the situations, making the right decisions to either throw the ball away, try and run, or check the ball down. Even on some third downs, you're going to give Katron Allen a chance to break a tackle rather than try and do something stupid with the football. He just looked like a senior. It was very nice. It was really nice watching a senior quarterback, a veteran, a guy that's going to be in the NFL next year, run an offense. It was really nice to watch all of the mechanisms of them able to go quickly and use tempo, calling his own plays, being a master at the line of scrimmage, all of these things that we hadn't seen necessarily in a while. Sean Clifford did them and didn't get any credit for them because it didn't look like Aller when he did them. So there are a lot of positives from Aller, and it's nice to just watch that. By the way, the ums and us here at the end of the podcast, I'm just looking to make sure because we had a active chat today, and I don't want to miss anything that you guys had to say here in the chat. So as we're getting down to the end of the show, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So I'm going to do a quick read, and I wish I had elevator music to play while I was doing this. But anyway, if you're listening to the podcast, people probably tuned out 2 minutes ago. So let's not belabor this point anymore. Thanks for being here. Again, if you watch the BWI Live show and you didn't like the video, come on, man. Help me out here. But we are steamrolling towards 18,000 subscribers. We're less than 50 away. We started, I think, yesterday about 100 away. So we're doing a great job here of getting all the people on board for the 2025 season. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button because we got a lot of great content coming your way. And I promise you, I'm going to work for it. I'm going to work to earn that subscription. So if you got it in you, hit the subscribe button. And we'll talk to you on Tuesday when we have more in-depth insights of the things I learn. You'll learn about them both at bluewhiteillustrated.com and, of course, here on the BWI Live show starting on Tuesday at 10 a.m. James Franklin will talk on Monday as well. You know the schedule. Or if you don't, again, bluewhiteillustrated.com, place to go. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We'll talk to you then.